learning how to listen to my materials with all my senses, to be responsible to them, so that I can be as inspired by the stories they have to tell as those I hope to inspire through my work and word. The intention and process is as important as the end result. These shelves were no different. Consisting of 2 slabs of the same black acacia tree, there's meant to be a continuity between each shelf, and also a conversation held with 2 of my recent works that reside inside the space, themselves made from 2 slabs of their own shared black acacia tree, and which each have their own stories, both independent and interconnected. Trees are incredibly accurate timekeepers. These shelves explore the concept of a tree's life story. There is a science called Dendrochronology that has grown from counting tree rings to construct and extend timelines to an interdisciplinary field that analyzes the records written into the incredibly rich lines of these rings, unlocking stories that span vast landscapes of environmental history, human history, and climate history over the course of thousands and thousands of years. In her book called A Tree Story, A History of the World Written in Rings, Valerie Truette, one of the world's foremost experts, describes discoveries that tell stories not only of time, but also significantly in this moment of consequence that is our lifetime, the story of us. Telling the human story is told through the lives of trees and the record of impact through time of our endeavors on the natural world. With that in mind, these shelves explore the concepts of storytelling and perspective. I see these grain patterns in my sleep, not necessarily in my dreams, but in my mind while I sleep, I'm aware of reviewing the patterns. And while Dendrochronology examines the cross-section of a tree and considers our story through the record of time, most of the wood that I work with is in vertical slabs. The grain from this wood has me considering from a new perspective the story of a tree's life. Most of the interesting areas that we see in the grain come from some type of trauma. A branch that was cut or broken, a disease or wound and the scars from healing, environmental conditions and the impacts on its microbial and cellular composition as it's growing. All of these create the character in the grain. And some of these most interesting features come from the impacts of the inputs of the tree's life. Not too different than us. The beauty in the grain of this wood is influenced not only by its record-keeping of time, but by its passage through life. I reflect on an idea suggested through yoga, meditation, neuroscience, on the topic of mental health, and the idea of our issues being stored in our tissues. In other words, that the traumas of our life on an emotional and mental level are stored in our physical bodies, especially when unresolved. I relate this in connection with the wood before me as I think about the issues stored in the tissues of this tree that I now tune into and with a sense of stewardship pay honor to the beauty in the story, this passage recorded in the patterns of the grain. These are the ideas that I play with as I work on these shelves, trying to find a way not only to hear the conversation, but to take a little bit of the prose of the story and turn it into poetry. In poetry, we will sometimes take the smallest section of representation, use it somewhere where it hadn't originated, but where it has a different relevance that continues the connection. With that same idea in mind, I took some scraps from the same slab to use for the bow ties and inlays, using continuous sections when possible to create the inlays that are relevant to each other, but that also line up and have a relevance to the conversation within the piece as a whole. The In this way, I hope to honor and continue the story of the tree's life and impart some of the wisdom held in its beauty. So there you have it. Those are the shelves. They do relate and have relevance as a continuing connection to the art pieces inside the shop, which themselves represent the kind of tip of the spear for me in a long line of continuing and evolving ideas.